Rebuilding this democracy in this USA requires a complete rebuild of the constitutional law. According to the courts, according to media, according to government officials, according to religion, it doesn't matter what you or who you ask. It's a case of the university is the expert, the university decides, the university is God, there is no choice. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter who they threaten. It doesn't matter if the entire world is being threatened. It doesn't matter. The university is God. And of course, the university controls the courts, who control every part, and every piece, and every action of the Constitution. And they simply remain silent when the Constitution is created to enforce the law. They just simply close the door in my face or yours. So we have to start where the problem really begins. And that is with the legal assumption that lawyers can decide everything for us. That lawyers can be bought, of course, with power and pride and everything that greed demands, and they are. So in order to get the lawyer away from our court system, to get our court system back from the power and the pride of people who want to enslave us, we have to return to what democracy is meant to be. And democracy is meant to be that we shall govern ourselves by the law that we create, so that we can be assured nobody gets to rule over us. And that, of course, is why we have the Second Amendment, to ensure that we retain the power to stop somebody who is trying to rule over us. And you can make of it what you want, but those groups of people who did not have the gun or the opportunity to say stop were just simply genocide just simply occurs. I once tried to be a pacifist when I was 7th or 8th grade, in grade school. See how that worked, and it doesn't work at all. It just enforces the idea that others who would not even consider it before began to think they could be, powerful or whatever it is that they wanted to be. And of course, you just simply have to stop and say, no, this is not working. You can't do it this way. You can't. It doesn't work. You have to, when hate will not go away, you have to confront it. And that's just how it is. And hopefully you can do that with law, and if you can't, well, that's the end of that. So we have to identify what is working with the law. And in order to gain control over our nation, this USA, we have to accept the fact that the Constitution is the law of this land. And the Constitution forbids the U.S. Supreme Court from interpreting anything about the Constitution itself. We are the owners of the Constitution. We are its source of governing. We are the power of the United States of America. We are. We the people. That's what we the people means. And we hire employees to do our work for us. They're not God, they're not ruler, they're not king, they're not anything. They are our employees. And they're given the job to do what the Constitution says. And they have to swear to do it in order to get the job. They have to say, I will obey the Constitution. And the Constitution, of course, is unknown to most of them. Completely unknown. And it's completely unknown to most of the people. And that is a big problem, because the education system failed. And the education system failed because the university cult wants control over you. So we have to remove the cult from our education system. We have to remove the lawyer from our legal system. We have to identify what is true and what is real and what works for us. Again, we have to, have a Bill of Rights so that everybody understands, and we have to have, not more than 100 laws total, so that everybody understands those. And we have to have a list of things, that work for us. In other words, no one person isn't going to get $50 billion for some damn thing, while somebody else who had the very same thing happen to him gets nothing. There is absolutely no justice in that. And there's no justice in letting the medical establishment extort us. And the end result of it all is it turns back to where did the university go wrong? And we look underneath the covers and we find it is the university elite who make all these decisions. It is the university elite, the people who make the decisions, that are our enemies. We have to take the cover off of them and review them as citizens of this United States or wherever they come from, and find out where and why and what went wrong. Because there are many things that are wrong in this United States. And immigration is, of course, only one problem. And immigration went wrong because not enough people are dying. That's where immigration went wrong. We have 100 million people born in this world, 100 million people born in this world every year that were not here the year before, over deaths. In other words, 100 nations have to make room for 1 million people each in every nation of that 100, so that, just to remain stable. This is the requirement because, that many children are born. You cannot do that. You can't, just avoid reality because you want something else. It won't work. You can't claim that you can throw the immigrant out and everything will be fine because there's 100 million more born every year than were here last year. 100 million. Another billion in 10 years or less. And if we return to the rate of birth that was the 1950s, that means that there's another billion people born in less than 5 years. In less than 5 years. Another billion people. Billion people. Do you have any clue? Is there a brain cell in your head that still works? Or is the university just the illusion of stupidity that you bought? Are you stupid? Wake up. So anyway, what we have to do is have a new court system that's built upon justice and fair play. We have to have a new way of paying lawyers and judges and so on, and a new way of doing everything. And that would include that we need to go ahead and let the judge make decisions for us. That part is actually necessary because then we have to have an audience for that courtroom, a real audience that can be proven to be an audience, so that the judge, who makes a decision is then graded upon the decision, and if we disagree with his decision will be overturned. We need to judge the judge, and we need to judge the lawyer, and we need to make sure that everybody is doing what they can to create justice and to establish fair play and to prove that equality does exist for us all. One of the things that is constant is you can't have a hero unless you have an enemy. And of course they made alcohol the enemy, and alcohol is an enemy. Who wants to be on the road with someone so drunk they can't drive? Nobody. But the answer to that is, they made everybody an enemy. If you touch the stuff, basically, you're an enemy. That's just not true. Just like cigarettes, if you touch a cigarette, you're the enemy. That's not true either. And lead is not, we used lead piping, humanity has used lead piping for 1,000 years or so, or 3,000 years. And it did not make you sick, and humanity would be completely wasted if that was true. And the end result of it is that our cans of food were soldered to seal them for until 20 years or so ago. And people decided that they could heat the can up and give it to their child without a dish or plate or plot, or that made it a lot simpler. That's all I got to do is just take the label off and heat it up and give it to the kid. But unfortunately, that melted the solder, and the solder got into the soup or whatever was in that can. And then the children ate the solder or the lead, and that's what made them sick. It wasn't anything else. And you can't blame them, to avoid that. If you're still doing that, put the can in a pot of water and heat it that way. And that way, everything is fine. You can't overheat the solder unless you put it on fire, over the fire. So, we have to have a different understanding of what society is. It's not you get to be free of everything that can be made a decision. You can't hire people to make important decisions for you. You have to do that for yourself. We, the people, have to do that for ourselves. That's what democracy means, that we make the laws that rule ourselves, rather than letting somebody else make the laws that rule over us. It's as simple as that. You cannot have a democracy and let other people make laws for you. You can't do that. In the 1800s, back when there was no communication and everybody rode a horse and everyone, he was just fighting to stay alive and so on, they had to do what they had to do, and it was the best they could do. But that is not true of today. Not even kind of, sort of, maybe. That is not true today. And unfortunately, media controls the mass hypnosis of the mob. And the mob is what universities want. And so media runs the mob and manipulates the mob and tempts the mob and all kinds of things, as was proven by COVID. COVID did not have a valid, real world evidence to back up. We have to do it. Didn't have any of that. Not a single damn thing. Only the word of the university is God. And only the word of the media empire that has paid billions of dollars to enforce we are a mob. Mass hypnosis works. Mass hypnosis works. All you have to do is make sure that all of them agree on something. Because once they all agree on something, then they can be manipulated to do or believe whatever it is about that something that you want them to believe. So, you can't stop there. You have to escape the consequences of somebody else has been in charge for way too long. Somebody else has indoctrinated every child for the last, 100 years or whatever it is that evolution took over. And you need to guarantee what is or is not true. You don't have to believe that evolution is all bad if you want to. You don't have to believe in Christianity or creation or any of that. But you have to let the evidence decide if you want to have a true understanding of what this is. You have to let the evidence decide. You can't just say, I believe, as is religion. You can't do that because belief is based upon want, and what you want is not enough to decide what is true. So you have to, you have to learn. You don't want to learn. You have to live according to what the law needs you to do. You don't want to do that. You have to accept the idea that being wrong is the end of life on earth. You won't do that. You can't be greedy and destroy the entire future of life on earth because you want more right now, but you do it anyway. You can't make everything else on earth extinct without making yourself extinct. You don't want that, so you just avoid that and believe whatever you want. You can't, overheat the world or the planet and expect to survive. And you don't want to believe that either. So the end result is 50 years later, I'm still fighting to make you realize that this is not a game. That there are real consequences for the things you don't do. And you don't, work for the law. You like to play games. That's what politics are all about. The extremes go to this side and one extreme goes the other side, and now we can fight. I'm right. But of course you're not right. And extremes are not right. And you can't compromise to identify what is true either. What is true is true. Simple as that. What is true, but you have to identify what is true to understand what is true. And that means you have to identify what is not true as well, whether you like the consequences of it or not, whether you don't want to do the work or not. You have to do what life requires you to do, and life requires us all to understand if we don't change, we're going to die. We'll be extinct.